Hello, my name is Phil Heaton. I'm the interim program manager of the SEUPB's managing authority, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to today's webinar, where we'll be celebrating the achievements and reflecting on the lessons learned of our Children and Young People Local Authority Action Plan projects. The Peace 4 program funds Children and Young People projects under two strands: 2.1, which is Peace for Youth, and 2.2, which is the strand delivered through local authority action plans. We'll be focusing here on that second strand, 2.2, which has been the subject of the evaluation conducted by RSM UK, whose findings we'll be hearing more about later today in the company of our guest speaker, Kula Yasuma, the Northern Ireland Children and Young People Commissioner, as well as representatives from Sligo County Council and Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. Before we get underway, I just have a few technical notes. First of all, to ensure best performance of Zoom, we recommend that you close other tabs and any programs likely to drain your bandwidth. We would also recommend using Chrome or Safari to view the session. If you do experience any issues, please visit our social channels where the live viewing link can be accessed. And should you need to contact anyone at SEUPB due to any technical issues, please email communications@seupb.eu. There's no need to switch off your microphone or cameras today, as we'll not be taking any spoken questions from the floor during the workshop. The chat function will also not be in use. However, as you are listening to the presentations, if you have any questions that you would like to pose to our speakers, please send them to us so that we can put them to our panel during agenda item 4. And to send us your questions, you will have to log on to Slido. If you've never used Slido before, it's very simple to use. All you will need to do is go to slido.com and enter the code that I'm going to be showing on my screen now. Or alternatively, you can scan the QR code, which you can also see on the screen now. And this will take you to a page where you will join as a participant, and then you'll be able to ask your questions. So I really would encourage you to log on to Slido and send us your questions so that we can take full advantage of the insights and observations of the guest speaker and project representatives during that panel discussion at the end of the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, and by registering, you have agreed for us to send you the link of the event once it's been uploaded to our YouTube channel. And finally, I should mention that the final evaluation report on the impact of the Children and Young People projects is still being finalised. Therefore, the findings presented during agenda item 3, these are our emerging findings at this stage, and definitive findings will be shared with programme bodies and departments in advance of the publication and will be published in full on SEUPB's website once the final report is completed. So that's the technical side over. I will shortly be handing over to Glenn Donnelly of RSM UK, who will be the moderator of today's event. But first, there will be a short video from the SEUPB's Chief Executive, Gina McIntyre. Thank you very much.
Hello, and welcome to this special session exploring the impact of Peace 4 funding across the region. My name is Gina McIntyre, and I am the Chief Executive of the Special Youth Programmes Body, and I'm delighted that you've joined us today. Peace 4 programme was developed with the aim of creating significant attitudinal change, continuing the work of previous programmes from 1995. Divisions between communities are unfortunately still evident here, and a number of key issues need to be addressed in this region in order to ensure the continued peace that we've enjoyed for almost 25 years. Peace programme is one of the ways the EU has demonstrated its continued support for our peace process by assisting the economic and social development in Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. And you will find out today just how effective that commitment has been. The funding package for Peace 4 specifically focused on a narrow range of activities to ensure that the funding provided could have the greatest impact. Local authorities were required to demonstrate and deliver outputs and tangible results, and today we are going to examine the impact those plans have. This session discusses the core objective of children and young people within those local action plans and that were funded across Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. The objective being to enable our children and young people to form positive and effective relationships with those from other backgrounds and communities. This is giving future generations the skills to help shape and build a more cohesive society. It's important for us to look back at the work carried out by all of the projects under Phase 4 and indeed previous programmes. Reflection like this allows us not just to identify opportunities we might have missed or how we could have done things better, but also to highlight the very many success stories we have. The local authority action plans have performed over and above what we could ever have hoped for, meeting and exceeding their targets and making real positive changes for our shared future throughout all of the 17 council areas. I'm delighted to welcome our guest speaker for this session, Kula Yamasun, the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People. I'm going to hand you back to the team now, but before I do, I'd just like to thank the local authorities, staff and the volunteers that have worked so hard over the last few years of the programme, and of course all the children and young people who took part in the projects. Phase 4 has faced more challenges over the last few years than we've ever seen before, and if it wasn't for the hard work and dedication of those who were so diligent in the work of these Phase programme and the projects that they were specifically looking at, we wouldn't be looking at the incredible impact that those projects have made today. I'd like to take time to also acknowledge the ongoing support provided by the Executive Office in Northern Ireland and the Department of Rural and Community Development in Ireland, who work so closely with us in the programme. EU, the UK Government, the Government of Ireland and the Northern Ireland Executive are continuing to support this work from the Peace and the Interreg programme, which we also manage, in the new Peace Plus programme, which is worth €1.1 billion. It's been approved by the Northern Ireland Executive, Government of Ireland, the North-South Ministerial Council, and recently adopted by the European Commission. And we've commenced with pre-development workshops to assist organisations develop and design projects in readiness for funding calls for Peace Plus, which we hope will open later this year. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy this session.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd just like to welcome everybody to this afternoon's session. My name is Glenn Donnelly. I'm an Associate Director at RSM UK, and as Phil mentioned, I'm going to be moderating the session today. So we're just going to start just by having a very quick run through in terms of the agenda items for this afternoon. So we just had our sort of introduction and housekeeping from Phil and a welcome from Gina, the SEUPB Chief Exec. Shortly, we'll be having a keynote address from Kula Yasuma, the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People, followed by some insights to projects from Sligo County Council and from Mananoma District Council. At that stage, then we'll move on to touching on the evaluation, some emerging findings, and then we'll open up the discussion through a panel Q&A before closing remarks. I'd just like to remind everybody, if you would like to ask a question at any point throughout the session, the way to do that is through using Slido. So you would either use slido.com and enter the code, and I'll give a quick demonstration in a moment just to show how that works. Or alternatively, you can use the QR code that's currently on screen, and that'll bring you to the site. So just to maybe give a quick demonstration in terms of how that Slido link works, if you simply open your browser and go to slido.com, it'll open up this landing page and you just enter the code. So for today, it's 1273083. Hit enter, and that'll then bring you into the event page, at which point you can type your question. So we've got one already, and you can type your question. You can choose whether or not to add a name and just click send, and then that information will come through to us. Okay, so jumping back to our agenda items, I'd now like to quickly introduce our keynote speaker, Kula Yasuma, the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People. Kula took up appointment as the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People in March 2015, having previously been the Director of Include Youth for almost 17 years. She's also been involved in the boards of a number of voluntary and community organisations, and as well as a number of non-departmental public bodies. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Kula.
Thank you very much, Glenn, and I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm now in a state of panic that this technology won't work, but I'm assuming you can all see my screen here in front of you. So as Glenn said, I am the Commissioner for Children and Young People, and it's my job to promote and protect the rights and best interests of young people through a variety of ways, raising awareness of children's rights, reviewing the adequacy and effectiveness of laws, of services, of policies regarding children and young people, conducting research, issuing guidance, bringing legal proceedings, supporting families to make complaints, and also in undertaking investigations. When we talk about the rights of children and young people, we are actually talking about a specific instrument, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and you'll see sort of we've tried to capture that in one slide there. The UK government, which obviously then includes Northern Ireland within that, has signed up to the convention, and we have a certain amount of duties around meeting the 42 rights that are outlined in it. It does afford particular rights for vulnerable groups such as children with disabilities, children in care, children in need, and those in contact with the criminal justice system, as well as children who are refugees and asylum seekers. What it also does do is it sees the whole child. It doesn't compartmentalize rights. It doesn't say one is more important than the other. It also lays out that they're not optional. We can't pick and choose. You know, there's nothing a child can do that means they lose their rights. And rights are not an act of charity. They're not it would be a good idea to get done. And with rights do not come responsibilities on children. Responsibilities belong to us as adults. So there, just very quickly, there are 4 general principles of the convention, and I suppose it's what should weave through everything we do. Article 2, protection from all forms of discrimination. Article 3, that everything we do should be in the best interest of the child, and it makes a really important distinction between the child and children. It sees the individual child as a unique being, as a unique citizen, and that responses should be wrapped around and should take account of the individuality of that child, and that's really, really important. So Article 6 talks about the right to life, survival and development, and then we have Article 12, which is the voice of the child. Now, I'm going to go on and talk a little bit, and I'm not going to talk specifically about the projects that were funded under 2.2 of Piece 4, because you're going to hear about that. But I hope that as I'm talking, you'll see the applicability and how those projects and programs, particularly that you're going to hear about today, have actually served to implement the rights of young people in Northern Ireland. But first things first, what's going on for our children at the moment? First thing to say, children aren't numbers, obviously, and you would expect me to say that. You know, from my accent, I choose to live here. I'm not from here, but I chose to move here 28 years ago, because you all, as people of Northern Ireland, your children in particular, are brilliant. You're funny, resilient, and to quote a phrase, the best crack. But there's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm just going to run through some statistics. So 17% of young people between the ages of 5 and 19 have a diagnosable mental health issue in Northern Ireland. By the end of 2020, 11,000 of them were referred to child and adolescent mental health services. By the end of December 21, 948 children were waiting more than 9 weeks for those services to kick in. We have 22,187 children with a statement of special educational needs. And when you add the other 42,000 who have not got a statement but have an SEN, that brings the number to 64,500 children in Northern Ireland have some sort of special educational need. 49% of our children on free school meals get what we call 5 good GCSEs. That's 5 GCSEs, A star to C, including English and maths. But 78% of children who are not on free school meals get 5 good GCSEs. There are 2,408 children on our child protection register as of the end of last month. That is 162 more than at the beginning of the pandemic. There's 3,661 children in the care of the state by the end of last month. That is nearly 299 more than at the beginning of the pandemic. 89,000 children are waiting for a first or review outpatient appointment with a consultant. 1 year is not an uncommon length of time for them to wait, and some are waiting up to 4 years. That is about 20% of the children and young people in Northern Ireland under the age of 18 are waiting for a first or review outpatient appointment. And next week, I'll be publishing the updated figures on the waiting times, and just give you a wee heads up, they're a lot worse than they were this time last year. And the last thing you see there, or you haven't got it there on this slide, 97% of children in our juvenile justice centre were not convicted. So a lot of children are in custody, or some children are in custody for reasons other than their crime. And then 27% of our children experience relative poverty. In 2019, we haven't got more up-to-date statistics. It's going to be a lot higher than that. What's going on at the moment. And nearly 4,000 families are homeless or in housing crisis. So that's what's going on for our children and our young people, particularly the vulnerable one. And I accept that a lot of what I'm saying is probably more relevant to 2.1 than 2.2, but here we go. So what I want to just do the rest of my time is to talk about what peace and Northern Ireland peace means for children and young people. And I'm really pleased to be here to be celebrating the work that the councils have done. And as I've said, you'll hear more about the specifics. You heard that I became Commissioner in 2015, and I set priorities, mental health, poverty and inclusive education. But one of the first things I did was we went out and talked to young people and checked with them if the priorities were right. And they said, yes, they are right, but you haven't actually thought about the impact that paramilitaries and the impact of living in our communities, what that has on our lives, the control they inflict upon us, and what that means for us. So this was, of course, then added as a priority and has been progressed through advising and partnership work with the Commissioner for Victims and Survivors of the Conflict, who late last year published this report. And I commend the report because it sits down and it tries to analyse what peace means for children, particularly children who live in more marginalised and more socially economically deprived communities, and it should be the reference point for all of us in this work. I remember the first time I told a young person we were in a post-conflict society, and he invited me to visit his community and then to tell him that again. So it really didn't end in 1998 for many, and for some the repercussions continue to be emotionally and in some cases physically paralyzing. When we think about paramilitarism and policing, we have clearly seen a change in the narrative concerning so-called paramilitary groups, and we've shifted from that language to criminal gangs, and that's to be welcome. But it does remain deeply concerning that reports and reviews, countless reports and reviews, and along with children's testimonies themselves, continue to reiterate the way that gangs control and re-traumatize their communities and children and young people in particular. The normalization of violence and abuse of children, not only through physical assaults, but also coercive control, criminal and sexual exploitation, is commonplace in too many of our communities. We have what Paul Smith, some of you may know him, calls a societal shrug to the continued inability of statutory organisations to address this issue. And that is really distressing and obviously unacceptable. What it didn't end in 1998 found was that the responsibility then ultimately falls on individuals and communities where local councils and local authorities really play a pivotal role to respond, and these communities were being left to respond to these issues because we see it as an internal community problem rather than a bigger societal one. And in no other scenario would we tolerate such abuse of our children and young people. So it's imperative that we ensure the full and effective protection of children and young people from trauma, violence, mistreatment and criminal coercion in their communities as we look to building peace or further building peace. So the other issue, and I'm going to stop sharing my slide here, but the other issue is how we teach the conflict here in Northern Ireland, how we help our young people to understand our past. And I have previously voiced concern with regards to our peace agreements here, from the very first, the Good Friday Agreement, to the latest, the Stormont House Agreement, which overlooks the role of young people as peace builders and peacemakers. It overlooks them in how it incorporates and hears their voices in the discussions to address the legacy of the conflict. Peace processes should include children and young people, but also it should build and help them understand the world around them and how we got to where we are, again, where the peace programs come into their own, and helps them put into context the experiences of their families and of their communities. And therefore, the programs, as I said, that we're discussing today are really, really important. Children learn so much about the past from their families and communities, but we need a new education school curriculum which complements and supports the sharing of stories by families. A lot more work needs to be done in schools and across education more generally, and of course youth work and in our communities, to make sure that we have a whole school curriculum, a whole community curriculum, which promotes mutual understanding of Northern Ireland's history and our community identities. Of course, it's not straightforward, and we must start with training and supporting our educators, both formal and informal, as well as consulting with parents and of course young people themselves. However, and it's a big however, none of this is possible without an agreed narrative of the past, or a shared narrative, or a composite narrative. There's lots of words that are being used, and it must be the same curriculum across every school. Moving on to identity, and some of what I may say now might be a little bit unpopular with many of you, but there it is. Identity is really important. It's who we are. You know, we are many things, and I'm not looking for a society that's one blob of brown, even though I'm wearing brown today, of brown grey sludge. Our individual identity, who we are, what we are, makes us a vibrant community, gives us a sense of belonging, and helps us to know, as I say, who we are and how we fit in. And I'm aware I'm running out of time here. But identities can also be very complex, and we should be able to be in control of it. Many young people believe the labels that are imposed on them are based on historical issues rather than their own reality and current context. I have for some time been uncomfortable with putting CNR and PUL attributions on our young people, purely based on their postcode. I accept that doing so recognises that our social housing, our education system remains deeply segregated, and that division is rife in some communities, more so than it has been for many years, with the issues around Brexit and the protocol providing an opportunity for some to entrench those divisions. But CNR and PUL make judgments with regards to religion and political opinion to a group who up to the age of 18 can't vote, and who are up to the age of 24 the least likely to vote of any of our other age cohort. So we're ascribing to them political opinion, and we're ascribing to them a religion without actually asking to them. And they are very clear in saying, I am not those things, or it's some, of course, are those things. Many I live in BT19, which is predominantly a Protestant area. Many in BT19 are would be unionists or loyalists and would be Protestant, but many are not. And we need to understand that just because I live in BT19 doesn't mean I'm PUL. And more so for children and young people. And if we're to move away from our divisions, we must allow young people to choose their own labels, and we must then adapt our processes accordingly. Key to this is the provision of physical and emotional safety to children and young people to be themselves. Like I said, I'm mindful of the time, and I hope everyone else is more diligent than me in sticking to it. I wanted to go on and just say very briefly that our emotional health and mental well-being of our young people is incredibly important. And as I said, we know that young people who live in our most deprived communities, i.e. those who are most impacted by the conflict, are more likely to have emotional and mental health issues than those who live in our least deprived communities, We know, because a prevalence survey was done just before the pandemic, that in Northern Ireland we have 25% more higher mental ill health amongst our children and young people than any other jurisdiction, and that's of course attributed to the conflict and the fact that our young people are living the trauma of their parents and their grandparents and their communities, and that transgenerational trauma is a thing, and it's a thing our children and young people are experiencing. It's not the same as as those of you who lived through the conflict as children, but our children and young people are living through it in another way. There is a marked improvement in our society in attitude towards mental health, but we still have a way to go. So as we look forward to Peace Plus, I think it's really important that we know that the programme, and you know this better than I, does not work in isolation. There is a number of initiatives going on at a region-wide level as well as locally. Children's Services Cooperation Act, the Programme for Government and the Children and People Strategy, the pending, hopefully very soon, although I have no optimism, anti-poverty strategy, our mental health strategy, our family and parenting support strategy, safeguarding processes. The list goes on and on and on of where we need to work in collaboration, work to the same agenda and the same menu with each other. And I know that Peace Plus will do that as it goes forward. And I'm going to finish by saying there's one more partner in this process, and that's children and young people themselves. They are the best defenders of their own rights, and they are up. We've seen it again and again and again. They are up for having the conversation about the best way forward as we build on peace in Northern Ireland, as we develop more programs to help to do that. So I look forward to hearing how that will be progressed in partnership with children and young people themselves. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Kula. It was a very thought-provoking speech, and it really sets in context today's this afternoon's session. Our second speaker today is Joan McGrath from Sligo County Council. So Joan's worked in early years in school-age childcare sector, both nationally and internationally, in practice and in development roles for over 30 years. Joan's worked with the council and their childcare committee team specifically since 2006, having worked previously in the UK, Australia, Dublin and Northern Ireland. So I'm going to now pass over to Joan, and she's going to provide an insight into the local authority Children and Young People project that was delivered at Sligo County Council.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, Joan, that's working. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Glenn. My name's Joan McGrath. I'm a support and development worker with Sligo County Childcare Committee, and we would work in partnership with Sligo County Council on different projects, the Peace funded one being one of them. Here we go. So that's just giving you an idea where we're located by the Atlantic. A lot of you may be familiar with Ben Bulbin or the surfing in Sligo. But so who is Sligo County Childcare Committee? We were established in 2001. We're coming up to our celebrating our 21st birthday, and we operate at the as a local agent for projects and programmes supported by the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth. We offer a number of support services that support the development and quality, affordable, accessible early years and school-age childcare in County Sligo. And in 2018, we were successful in a grant application to receive Peace funding through the Sligo County Council under Peace 4. This programme was to develop a cultural awareness and inclusion programme that would be delivered to practitioners that were in Sligo. The target was to have 10 childcare services on board as part of the project, and 83 children, 10% of whom would be from the Protestant faith. So the programme entailed a 4-day accredited training of the module, which is QQI level 6, training, delivery and evaluation component. 1 day's training and inclusion programme that was devised by a staff team in Sligo County Childcare Committee. The delivery of this training programme to focus on cross-community and multicultural education to peers and children aged 0 to 12, and receipt of resources and materials for engagement and use by the children in relation to gaining an understanding and further knowledge on cross-community and multicultural education, including faith-based and cultural education. Just the content of the training programme included an outline of policy context, the importance of identity, understanding the importance of terminology, the impacts of attitudes, values, and the concept stages of delivery, profile of the religions and language nationalities nationally and in Sligo, the role of the early years educator and the school-age childcare practitioner, the role and impact played by a quality environment provided to children, anti-bias curriculum, and how an inclusive practice is underpinned by an inclusion policy. This programme also complemented national quality and curriculum frameworks that are in south of Ireland here, Aishtar and Shielta. So the participants undertook the training programme over 6 hours, and they came back for 3 full hours to where it was quality assured. They were then requested to go and deliver that training to their peers. They were able to, and this was to cascade the training to all staff members within their team. This was found that it was significant in terms of those who participated in continuing professional development and in their evolution as pedagogical leaders. One participant was a manager of a service, and she commented that when she delivered the training in a professional manner to her staff, she felt like a real leader. This included staff thinking about their own identity, which was important so that they could cascade that down for children being comfortable with their identity and being able to share that identity with their peers. An outcome of that was where staff were able to share about their own identity. So there was they've been working with colleagues for a number of years and they didn't realise that maybe they were born in a different country or little things like that, but that were significant to their identity. Another part of the programme was that they received resources that supported the programme of 30 hours that was delivered to children. This supported the exploration and gave children an understanding of various types of culture, clothing, and why differing religions, faiths, and cultures chose to dress in specific ways. This helped to open up discussion among staff, teams, and children. It highlighted at times the awareness and specifically the lack of awareness of faiths, cultures, communities, and practices. And it also helped to give children a safe space to share their different identities. There was also opportunity to engage with parents and strengthen on the partnership with parents. One practitioner or educator told me about asking a parent to show them how the hijab was put, dressed properly in that. And this just opened up a new relationship with that parent. It gave participants confidence to engage with parents on sensitive subjects relating to their faith, culture, and celebration. And this enhanced and had a very positive impact with the parents. Some comments from the parents included, when I greeted a grandparent in her language, she looked at me as if I had handed her $1 million. The pride from the parent that her family's culture was being recognised and celebrated in our setting was lovely. A parent from the Church of Ireland faith said they were delighted we were planning on including a harvest celebration, and that came about from the training undertaken by the educators in this programme. Another parent said that when they asked to show me how to put on the hijab, she thought this was unbelievable. and parents were so delighted that we were involved in this project. The training opened up opportunity for educators and school-age childcare practitioners to take the children out into their own community, to get to know their own community better. And this included visiting places like churches, which they never would have thought of visiting on a community walk around previously. This had a positive impact, again, with parents hearing about the children going out into the community, where the children were visibly seen within the community in different locations within the community. So impact on the project was that it was providing increased knowledge about different religions, cultural beliefs and customs. It supported a greater professional understanding and respect between the adults, resulting in stronger working relationships, which has a positive impact on the children. It helped to gain confidence for adults to create an enhanced and safer environment, which supports the identities of all the children attending their services. It created an atmosphere and a space where children can openly express and talk about their customs and beliefs relating in their identities and communities. And there was many stories talked about, you know, my mum wears a hijab and my dad wears different outfit going to worship, and I'm attending the local harvest celebration in our church, and it just opened and gave a safe space for those kind of conversations that wasn't really there before. It supported children to have a growing respect between each other, irrespective of their religion, culture, belief and custom. And participants have gained to have confidence to engage in further professional development. And that has included going on to further education up to master's level and going into management roles. So at the end of the project, we had a celebration, and there was a video that was recorded as the project developed, and that's available on YouTube. There's the link there, and that we launched the video at our celebration when certificates of participation were given to all participants. And just to finish then with our local WB Yeats, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. And through this project, it has given new education knowledge and knowledge to participants, which has been cascaded to their peers to support a whole team approach and enhance their practice and promoted cohesion between different faiths, cultures, as our local communities grow in diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Appreciate it. Our third speaker today is Deborah McCartan from Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. So Deborah is going to provide an insight into the local authority Children and Young People project in Fermanagh and Omagh. I'm going to pass across to her now.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council secured £2.8 million funding under the European Union's Peace 4 programme with support from SEUPB, the Peace 4 Partnership and the Education Authority as delivery partner. The rollout of the local action plan has greatly promoted and stimulated social development in the district. The Fermanagh and Omagh Peace 4 action plan has been influential in engaging over 2,500 participants and over 70 communities in a wide range of peace-focused initiatives, and has been instrumental in creating a more cohesive society. The Children and Young People's theme included delivery of 6 programs involving 947 young people engaged in program activity over a 6-month, 26 hours period. I am pleased to say that we exceeded our target of 869 participants. I will now spend some time highlighting the key achievements of each of the 6 programs. The Creative Cafes program delivered peace and reconciliation themed activities to 251 children and young people from all community backgrounds. Children participated in a host of fun and innovative classes involving creativity and self-expression over an 18-month period. A colourful expedition brought closure to the programme, which showcased the participants' creative work from photography, model, claying, art and painting, as you can see in the photograph. Activities took place in the Street Arts Centre in Omagh and in the museum in Enniskillen. Both venues were very suitable for young children with ample space to carry out the sessions. You will notice that I have presented a breakdown of the quantitative data on each slide, which I won't go into the specifics of, but the data includes participant numbers, community balance, and gender. This was done through close monitoring of participant engagement and completion of monitoring templates following each of the activities or sessions. This exercise was carried out by the facilitators, leaders, Piece 4 team, or anyone involved in the delivery. An evaluation was completed for the Creative Cafes programme, which showed that the programme was enjoyed by both parents and children. To highlight, 77% of parents agreed that they have a better understanding of other cultures, and 68% agreed that their children met new friends. The programme undoubtedly enriched the cultural and artistic lives of each participant directly. The cross-community youth sports programme helped to establish 10 new minority sport groups within the district, which enabled over 224 young people to participate in sports which are not traditionally played in the Fermanagh and Omagh area. That is Gaelic football and soccer. The programme has encouraged engagement in sporting activities while forming positive relations with young people with whom they would not normally socialise or engage with. Examples of clubs established included futsal, boxing, dodgeball, basketball, and gymnastics. Through this programme and as an exit strategy, 5 participants undertook further training to continue the sports club's post-funding. A celebration event took place in the Bonacre Centre in Irvinstown. A videographer captured young people's experiences of this event, and this video is available for anyone who wishes to view. I can send the link. The Youth Language Support Programme was delivered by Omagh Ethnic Community Support Group. The purpose of this programme was to reach out to younger members of the BME communities and the young Syrian refugees to help them to integrate more fully into their new surroundings through the enhancement of language and communication skills. This programme was delivered in conjunction with a wider language support programme as part of the Building Positive Relations Cross-Community Diversity programme. The following benefits were realised through feedback from the young people. The young people got the opportunity to make new friends that they would not otherwise been able to do. They learned new skills in the positive use of social media. They were given an opportunity to engage with other nationalities and cultures, and the friendly atmosphere of the group helped to create a bond between all participants whilst improving their language skills. The Education Authority Youth Service delivered 3 programmes, which included the Interlinkage Programme for existing youth clubs, the Resilience-Based Programme, and the Cross-Community Social Action Programme. Each of these programmes created excellent opportunities for over 400 young people, participants to form positive and effective relationships. The programme facilitated sustained cross-community membership of existing youth clubs, established youth forums for peace and reconciliation, involved activities to increase mental health awareness and well-being, and help young people to deal with topical issues such as cyberbullying, suicide awareness, and substance abuse, all of which was delivered on a cross-community basis. To highlight the key achievements of the 3 programmes, 200 young people developed positive engagement through participation in youth forums, peace camps, and completed OCN accredited peer mentoring and OCN good relations training. 149 young people involved in wellbeing forums to help improve mental health. 149 young people also attended after-school coping skills and exam stress programs and took part in the boot camps. 88 young people completed a youth leadership program which involved completion of OCN accredited level 2 award in youth leadership. Monitoring was consistent and a vital part for an effective evaluation reflection of our action plan. All officers were responsible for monitoring of participants, both quantitative and qualitative data. The process was quite simple, but required time to implement. The most important element for me was to be consistent with monitoring throughout delivery and capturing real-time data. The Peace 4 team developed an operational plan for each programme and issued monitoring templates. Monthly review of progress against operational plans took place via team meetings. The progress reports were relayed to the Peace 4 Partnership and SEUPB for consideration and approval. In addition, the Peace 4 team carried out quarterly financial reviews, monitoring spend against budget, and quarterly review of participants on each of the programs, for example, their community backgrounds, the hours of engagement, etc. All this information was collated and added to the Children and Young People's Evaluation Report. It also helped to create a closure video, a celebration event. The link is on the screen and available to view on the Council's website. This video highlights the changes that can occur when programs are developed to promote peace building and cross-community interaction. The plan has undoubtedly strengthened youth interaction and presented over 900 young people with opportunities to gain an understanding and appreciation of other communities and cultures. Moving forward and looking into the new Peace Plus programme, overall analysis of the data collected shows a lack of uptake from our PUL community. A more targeted engagement approach for Peace Plus will be required. This may be in the form of a capacity building focused programme. My experience through delivery is there remains some hard to reach residents and groups who are reluctant to engage in PNR activities. Again, a capacity building focused programme may bring those people to the fore and get them engaged. Effective partnership working is required. A co-design approach is much welcome within the community voluntary sector to identify the real issues and barriers to peace and prosperity for Peace Plus. Of course, it's important to build on the success of the Peace 4 programme, re-engage with our participants in the communities for Peace Plus. Particular emphasis on engaging with our BME, our refugee communities, and in line with current the executive office strategies. Engagement with schools would be beneficial and a direct access and effective mechanism for delivery in Peace Plus, something that that wasn't done through Peace 4. A consistent and effective monitoring approach would be very useful across all the local authorities to really measure the impact of the Peace programme moving into Peace Plus. And meaningful engagement without the need for the 26 hours engagement will be a great advantage in the delivery of Peace Plus. Okay, thank you. Am I still on?
Great. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Glenn. I just lost my last slide, but it was more to do with my email address if anyone wanted to get in contact.
No problem. Thanks very much, Deborah.
Thank you, Glenn.
If you can just... Perfect. I think at this point of the session, we'll look to present some emerging findings from the impact evaluation in relation to Action 2.2, the Local Authority Children and Young People projects. So I'll just share my slides on screen. So to provide a little bit of context just to the scope of our evaluation as part of RSM UK, we've been asked to address 4 specific evaluation questions. Firstly, commenting on how each objective and on whether and to what extent funded actions have contributed to the achievement of those objectives. Secondly, assessing the impact of the programme as a catalyst for lasting change, promoting peace and reconciliation. Identifying key lessons that can be learned to inform future investments. And finally, assessing the contribution of the programme to EU 2020 objectives and its horizontal principles. In relation to outputs, we were reporting 3 times. We reported in 2019, 2020 and 2022, with each report comprising 6 case studies, enabling a deeper examination of project progress and the key lessons learned. However, we do acknowledge this approach does have its limitations in terms of its applicability to all projects. In relation to the special objectives, our evaluation included the actions highlighted in this slide, including both actions within building positive relations, all three actions within shared spaces and services, and importantly, for the context of this afternoon session, we were only looking at the local authority, children and young people, so action 2.2 as part of specific objective 2. There's a separate evaluation being undertaken for action 2.1 for children and young people aged 14 to 24. So as mentioned, we developed 6 case studies per report, with 4 longitudinal case studies developed initially in 2019 and then updated in 2020 and 2022. Each report also contained then 2 snapshot case studies, so that's a point-in-time evaluation of projects, and there were 6 of those in total. So in total, across the 3 reports, we covered 10 case studies. In selecting those case studies, we were trying to be representative of geography, urban and rural locations, project themes, and of course the target groups identified within Piece 4. For local authority, children and young people, we looked at 2 case studies. Both were snapshots. The first being the Sligo County Council's Children and Young People project, which Joan had just spoke about. And when we looked at that in 2019. And secondly, the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council project, at which we looked at it in 2020 as part of our evaluation report. So taking a closer look at those case studies that we reviewed, the Sligo County Council Children and Young People project had expected an expenditure of €180,000. And whenever we reviewed the project, which was back in 2019, they actually had an actual spend at that stage of just €33,000, and that was in July 2019. As Joan highlighted as part of her presentation, the Sligo County Council project involved the implementation of a range of activities such as youth citizenship and leadership. It also involved things like conflict, community activism, capacity and inclusion through sport, music, heritage and the arts, inclusion and diversity through training childcare workers, supporting shared space development and looking at small grants. At the time of our evaluation, the programme was progressing well, although only 1 of the 5 programmes had been completed at that stage, which was the Capacity and Inclusion Through Sport programme. And the other 4 programmes were all underway, with all of them having achieved their stage 1 of delivery. So focusing in on that Capacity and Inclusion Through Sport programme, the impacts realised at the time that we engaged with the project were the development of greater knowledge, understanding and realism on the part of the young people who may have had little knowledge of the community relations issues prior to actually participating in the programme. And we also noted an increase in the number of participants who expected their community relations to either be better or about the same, and a decline in those who were expecting them to become worse or that didn't know. The evidence derived through the evaluation also identified that the use of these non-traditional activities worked quite well and was appealing in particular to those who would not normally engage in the more traditional field sport activities. So on the surface, the results for attitudes after participation in the sport programme would appear to indicate a decline in good relations, given the decrease in optimism about current and future state of community relations. However, when we looked a little bit deeper and discussed these follow-ons with the project stakeholders, we were advised that there appears to be sort of a trend of the results indicating greater knowledge and understanding and realism on the part of the young people involved who may have had little exposure or knowledge about the community relations issues prior to being involved in the programme. And thus there might have been potentially a little over-optimistic at the outset. So responses to the question comparing community relations 5 years ago and today suggest a similar pattern, with a shift from better to about the same and a decline in those who said they didn't know. But again, this suggests that informed realism. Finally, some responses to the questions about community relations 5 years from now offer some grounds for optimism, with an increase in the number of participants who said that they expected their community relations to be better or about the same, and a decrease in those who thought they might be worse or that didn't know. So our second snapshot case study then was the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council project. This one had a budget of approximately €630,000. And whenever we looked at the project in 2020, their spend at that point was almost complete. It was €610,000. At the time when we spoke to the project, they'd engaged with over 900 young people in a number of successful programs, as we've just heard from Deborah. So those included the Youth Initiative, involving over 200 young people, the establishment of the Youth Forums for Peace and Reconciliation, the peace camps that were delivered involving over 100 young people, the Youth Leadership Development Programme completed by 88 young people, and of course the training that was delivered across a range of subjects, everything from sort of cultural awareness through to conflict resolution and general inclusion. And finally then from the sporting aspect, there was over 224 young people that were involved from both communities playing a new sport and something that was away from traditional sports played within the local area. As Deborah mentioned earlier, the project itself has enabled children and young people to interact, socialise and play sport on a cross-community basis. On average, the impacts that we identified at the time of the evaluation, which were trying to show the real impact of the project, identified that 71% of programme participants said that they would socialise or play sport with somebody from a different religious background, and similarly 66% said that they would socialise or play sport with somebody from a different ethnic background. 59% reported feeling that relationships between communities had actually improved in the last 5 years, and similarly 57% felt that they would improve within the next 5 years. And finally, just to note that no participants that were engaged at that time felt that relationships were worse than they were 5 years ago, encouragingly, and only 1% stated that they felt that they would be worse in 5 years' time. So the result indicators show the attitudes of young people engaged in the programme after they'd finished the activities. And as cross-community engagement and interaction continues into the future, this can lead to a more reconciled understanding and a harmonious society. The targets outlined in the project application form were achievable and appropriate. However, at the time, we weren't able to access baseline data, so we weren't able to sort of measure specifically that level of improvement and change. However, we do know that the programme provided the opportunity for dialogue, training and contact between those of different backgrounds to allow relationships to start to build. We know that there was leadership training delivered to young people who in turn responded very positively with regard to relationships with their communities. And it's these embedded leaders that will continue to create impact after the programme activity stops. And finally, we know that there's been wider benefits delivered, including the well-being in terms of the training that's been delivered through resilience and language and sport programs, also culture and civic engagement. So bringing this all back to the key evaluation questions we noted at the start of the presentation, we can say that through direct engagement with young people and their communities, that the projects have directly attempted to address the lack of cross-community engagement and facilitate interaction that can engender attitudinal changes. The local authority children and young people programs have showed significant positive outcomes, with close to 1,000 young people engaging in Fermanagh and Omagh, and even just a year into the Sligo County Council project, 89%, almost 90% of their target participant number was already met, showing a strong uptake in the programme and strong demand for participation by children and young people. Critically, the projects offered an opportunity for young people to take those first steps in the process of breaking down preconceptions of communities and trying to showcase the commonalities between the children and the communities that they share with one another. In relation to the programme acting as a catalyst, we can see that the two projects we've looked at, the significance of their programme was in changing attitudes and the cross-community relationships that were being forged, particularly in the Fermanagh and Omagh programme, where close to 60% of the young people involved of the projects that we looked at were reporting at the end of the project that they felt relationships had improved between those from different backgrounds and that they would continue to improve. Therefore, the funded projects and activities delivered have all encouraged young people to partake in activities on a cross-community basis and develop skills, soft skills, and build respect for diversity. We did note some areas of learning as part of the evaluation. So one of the potential issues that might arise in a theme like this might be in relation to the focus becoming more so on achieving output targets rather than sort of focusing on building the quality of engagement. And a point worth considering in future programs might be that we might see, I suppose, enhanced impacts or further impacts by ensuring that engagement is at the forefront of the project's outcomes. It might also be hard, I think Deborah mentioned this as well, just in relation to trying to achieve the targeted number of hours of engagement, particularly with those younger age groups. And we'll touch on this further in a moment, but a focus on monitoring outputs can mean that attitudinal baseline surveys aren't always completed or aren't always picked up, which then makes it difficult to come back to measure the impact of the program at a later date. So we think a robust and coordinated approach to monitoring impact should be agreed from the outset. Our evaluation itself, as we mentioned at the start, covered those 3 specific objectives, and across those we've identified some areas of wider learning that can be applied, mostly focused on trying to enhance the quality of evaluation of the programs. In this evaluation, we've attempted to actually go beyond the regulatory requirement for SEUPB or for Piece 4 and try to explore those project level impacts. A number of the suggestions that have come out of these reports are being considered by SEUPB in an attempt to try and enhance their existing processes. In relation to data, we find that there can be a lack of clarity or in some cases an absence of targets, and often baseline data isn't available, which makes it difficult to then determine that level of change and what the sort of the true impact that can be attributed to the project activities is. And if there's a focus on delivering outputs and reporting on outputs, we've noted that this can also limit potentially the amount of information that's available for impact assessment at a later stage. Therefore, we think programs should consider digital survey methods to try and assess changes in attitude and perception, and that surveys should be undertaken at the start of the program activity to provide that baseline for comparison. We think that that will help to provide more regular updates in terms of impacts and result indicators for future programs, and also it should try and reduce the burden, the administrative burden on project delivery partners and make the process slightly more efficient. Just want to say thank you all for listening. That's sort of the end of the speaking elements, and we'd now like to open up the panel discussion, which will include our guest speakers from earlier in the session, as well as Paul Boylan, a program manager from SEUPB, who's specifically working within Peace Plus. So just a quick reminder, please submit any questions you have by going on to slido.com and using the code on screen, or alternatively, if you have your phone handy, you can scan the QR code. And with that, I'd just like to invite the panel now to all come back online. Perfect, thank you. So picking up on a few questions that have come in as we've been speaking. The first question is, I believe, potentially one for Paul. So it's a question about how Peace Plus will link with the proposed children and young people arm of the Regional Trauma Network, which is set to have a go live event later this month.
Yes, Glenn, thank you very much. Happy to take that question. Essentially, my understanding of the trauma network is there will be a pathway for clinical interventions to a large extent. It's only exclusively Northern Ireland. Obviously, the Peace Plus programs, Ireland, the border regions of Ireland, that is, and Northern Ireland in its entirety. So there's a slight difference there. In terms of its linkages, it'll be something that the projects coming forward under our theme 3, which is the children and young people theme. Overall, we have 123 million going into that, but specifically 3.3, we would expect any projects coming forward with that to be very much built around some of the existing infrastructure.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. Kula, we have a question in for you, which is, what would you recommend in terms of capturing community background of participants?
Yeah, that's the question I didn't want to answer. What the alternative is. I think it's to ask the participants. I absolutely understand. We've seen it with TBUC, and obviously we see it with all programs that look at peace, that, you know, we're generally talking about the two main communities. Northern Ireland is so much more than that, and we've already heard programs from other newcomer families and being involved. So for me, the question is to ask the participants how they identify their own communities before you set up the mechanisms. So I think there's maybe a piece of work to be done beforehand, so that you can then set up your monitoring processes accordingly, is to ask those young people and their families how they identify themselves, because it came through very strongly it didn't end in 98, but it's also it is also quite a big thing in our work over the last 4 or 5 years, where we're not PUL just because I live in a particular community. Don't put your labels on me as a young person. So I think that there would be a really interesting piece of work to be done across, particularly with Peace Plus and that level of independence, working with TO, and I know TO have already been thinking about this, of talking to young people and seeing what labels they prefer to be to use, understanding that we need this data. You know, I think your point about baseline data before we start is really important, and I get you need to do that, but ask the kids.
Great, thank you. We have a question for Joan, which is just around the project that you were delivering, whether you encountered any challenges and how you overcame them. Sorry, Joan, you've got your microphone muted. Apologies.
Yeah, I suppose a big challenge was time and commitment to the programme, but workers got around that, and management kind of had agreed to invest the time and allowed or required for the programme. In relation to the programme itself, there was challenges initially in broaching some of the subjects that we were suggesting to them, talking about religion, you know, because it had come to a stage for some services or some practitioners in their individual practice where they kind of thought, no, we don't talk about that. So it just, the information and the knowledge gave them the confidence to bring that back into the agenda. And it also created opportunity. Now, you know, as I say, it was testing for them to do that. And to be, you know, to broach those subjects with parents. They were kind of not broaching the subjects. So the challenge was for them to give themselves permission to have that conversation. And even, for example, you know, including the churches in their community, walk around with the children. It is, you know, a space within their community. So initially they were kind of saying, no, we wouldn't do that. We don't do religion. You know, it's open door for everybody. And I think they got to understand then the importance of that. And it was part of children's identity and their family's identity.
Great, thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions which are more addressed sort of openly to the panel. The first one is just around how Peace Plus will ensure that children and young people projects do not disrupt or just run parallel to other local initiatives, but work collaboratively and reinforce one another. But I'm just wondering if through project delivery, so I'm thinking, Deborah, if you've got any thoughts in terms of how your project, when it was being delivered, was able to be, I suppose, run alongside other projects and trying to complement those activities.
Thank you, Glenn. I think it's important to, I suppose, when promoting the CYP programs to the wider community, it's important to take note of what is actually happening within the community, and it's asking those questions, it's keeping the communication links open. Looking at the statutory organisations, working with the statutory organisations, the Education Authority, the Housing Executive, the colleges, and seeing how we can complement or add value to what they're already doing as opposed to duplicating. And we had quite a few of the statutory partners on our Peace for partnership. So it was just awareness and keeping the communication links open at all times in relation to development and delivery of our CYP programs.
Great, thank you, Deborah. Paul, I might just bring you in at this point. I've noticed that in Gina's initial opening, she had mentioned about the pre-engagement sessions as part of Peace Plus, and I'm wondering, is that an area that was looked at in terms of how can we make sure that project ideas coming through can work collaboratively with other project ideas or other activities currently in the process?
Yes, it certainly was. Obviously, the landscape's always moving to some extent. We have conducted an extensive consultation. There was a specific consultation with children and young people. Youth Pact and Joe Hawkins delivered out on that for us to really feed in their ideas to the development of Peace Plus. Hence, we've come out with 123 million specifically for children and young people. That's not to mention, the local authority money that we're talking about here today under 1.1 under Peace Plus. So in terms of the duplication and displacement, there's obviously a due process in terms of assessment, but when we are mapping the interventions, we're also looking at synergy with existing programs. We will be conducting and have been conducting pre-application workshops where the policy interests from both Ireland and Northern Ireland are represented at these sessions, and they map out some of the existing interventions so that when we do roll out this work, there is some sort of synergy. I'm conscious that we will have a plethora of grants going out within a relatively short period of time, but there are different levels of intervention. For instance, the small grants that POBA will be delivering out on. We then have the local authority work that they'll be doing with children and young people. We then have the regional work that we'll be doing with children and young people. So there's different levels of intervention and different scope and scale of projects, all hopefully heading to support children and young people.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. We've got another one that's just addressed across the panel, which I might bring you in first to speak on, Kula. So this is just a question of, are you aware of any gaps or areas of particular importance where potential Peace Plus projects for children and young people could be focusing on?
Oh, wow. That's
quite
no. I think the whole, we talked about the trauma network, and I think that whole, it's not about gaps, it's about, is there enough of? And I think that we need to see, for me, the gaps are the connections with, particularly with the voluntary and community sector services around children's mental health and well-being, about making sure that there are enough of that, enough of those, complementing work going on in schools to make sure that children don't get more and more mentally unwell, so that they then need statutory services. So I think for me that would be a gap. And when we're talking about peace, I suppose the bit of the equation, and I know there is a strand in Peace Plus around this, is the adult focus. Is, we've talked a lot about children and young people programs, but they go back into families, they go back into communities that are led and directed and controlled by adults. And if we don't do that piece of work with the adults in within that same, that directly complements the work we're doing with the young people, then what the young people pick up in these projects doesn't find somewhere to embed and hook into in a sustainable and meaningful way back into their communities, back into their families, back into their schools, back into their youth clubs. So I suppose they're the two things: how we take in a whole community, whole family approach to these sorts of programs, and secondly, are we confident that within our communities we have enough voluntary and community sector emotional well-being, early intervention programs for young people to prevent them getting more and more poorly, including concentrating on drugs and alcohol. So that was, Glenn, that was quick for me.
Thank you very much, Kula. It's much appreciated. I wonder, Joan, your presentation obviously talked about engaging not just with children, but with parents as well. Just picking up on that point that Kula mentioned about educating for the adults as well. Have you found that approach to be effective in terms of, I suppose, trying to combine those different elements of the training and the activity that you were delivering? Sorry, Joan, you're just on mute. Apologies.
Sorry. Yeah, we felt that was very important as part of our project. It was the adult education part of it, being the practitioners, and then that did cascade to the parent engagement. And that had a powerful impact because the children could see that their culture, faith, customs was being respected. And it just enhanced their sense of identity and well-being within the service and in that setting. In relation to, it was very successful as part of our programme because, feedback included from the practitioners, them getting to know more about their own or think more about their own identity and the importance of that and how that needs to be cascaded then to the children and their families as well. And it just built a growing respect then for children from different communities, irrespective of where they were coming from. I suppose going forward then, it's kind of building on the good work that has taken place already. And as Kula said, to think about the mental health and well-being for all different age groups, including the seldom heard voices and the some communities, the communities that don't engage as much, including maybe some of the new communities that are coming into Northern Ireland and the border county areas. And I know that will be kept in mind going forward with the new funding programme.
Great, thank you very much, Joan. Deborah, we've got another question in for you. I'm just wondering, you mentioned a challenge being trying to reach those hard to reach groups. And the question is, do you have any advice on how to reach those young people?
Thanks, Glenn. Yes, we've thought long and hard about this through, I suppose, the development of our Peace Plus action plans. And again, it's a co-design partnership approach, working with existing groups, in particular the Education Authority, the youth service. Their youth groups are already established. It's getting, I suppose, in there now, creating awareness of the Peace Plus programme, educating the youth leaders on what the Peace Plus programme is about, and getting the young people involved at a very early stage, at the development stage, and getting, I suppose, the information relayed then to the parents through, I suppose, promotional literature, consultation events, and as well as that, through our co-design consultation process, we are doing various events, but we're also going into the colleges, we are going into the libraries, we're making ourselves as open and as accessible as possible in order to get the words out there, so that we use our existing groups is probably the best way.
Good, thank you very much, Deborah. There's a very specific question, Paul, which I'm going to put your way. It's around the 26 hours of engagement and whether or not it's continuing in Peace Plus. So we've had a clarification that it relates to action 2.1 and not 2.2, but I wonder if you could just maybe shed some light on that.
No problem. I want to talk to some of the other points as well around the gap. So in relation to the 26 hours, it is not a requirement under Peace Plus under any of the themes whatsoever. So previously, under the local authority action plans, there was a requirement of a minimum amount of contact for 26 hours. We have removed that in recognition that sometimes the contact doesn't need to be a set amount of hours. It could be a transformative experience by having a meeting with a victim and a perpetrator, that coming together, have a half-an-hour conversation, and then that could be transformative. But it's up to the projects to put forward the arguments as to why they see the activity which they propose under their application to be transformative. We're open to listening to it, and hopefully it'll make things a bit more easier for people going forward. I just want to, on the gap thing, I think there's 2 points. I completely agree with Kula in that the provision of services and the support network around young people. We have the 3.3 theme under the new Peace Plus programme that's looking to provide capacity building with youth workers to help young people with emotional resilience and good relations. And we're looking to sort of support the areas of leadership where we could essentially, the network around young people has the skills to support them to maintain and manage their mental health. So this isn't clinical intervention or talk therapies. That's further down the line. That's state provision. We're about more the softer side of things and helping support that. And there's a project that we actually fund at the moment, the Our Generation project, which is proven very successful, and that's focused on urban villages, but that's likely to be a lot broader. But the main gap that I am concerned about is around the capacity of the community and voluntary sector over the next sort of, I would say, 12 to 18 months. We have a cost of living crisis where young people on the margins are going to feel it the most. So it's incumbent on us to try and mobilise around that sector to help them deliver over this next period. We're hoping to get the financial agreement associated with the Peace Plus programme agreed and in place so that we could start opening calls and delivering on the ground. So that's the challenge for us, is to mobilise quickly as the community and voluntary sector sort of goes through a period of change at the moment.
Cool, I see you nodding. Do you want to maybe come in on that point, or is there anything to add?
No, I think that's a point very, very well made. I think the burden on the voluntary and community sector will get greater because the people they serve will be under the cosh a lot more with the cost of living crisis, with poverty. So voluntary and community sector that provide food banks, that provide activities, that provide family support, particularly to our little ones. But they're also facing a cost of living crisis with fuel bills and with trying to pay their workers, a decent wage. So I 100% agree. And there is frustration, not so much with the Peace Plus, but with other programs or successor programs from European funding not getting out. And I'm Children's Commissioner, so my worry is the thousands of children and families who get services from these organisations who may find that lifeline cut off. So it's really good to hear that programs like SEUPB are looking to, or organisations like SEUPB are looking to expedite delivery, obviously, whilst making sure it's effective. That's really good to hear.
Yeah,
I wish others were the same.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I think owing to time, we'll need to draw this Q&A session to a close, but I would just like to pass on my thanks to all of our speakers today. Your inputs are very much valued and much appreciated. And I'd like to now pass back across to Phil to provide some closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Well, I found all of those presentations and that discussion just now incredibly interesting. So thank you very much for all involved, including those who sent through questions there. Kula, you really brought home the importance of the children and young people theme in terms of the continued impact of the conflict on young people and the role of children and the participation of children and young people in the promotion of peace. Deborah and Joan, you gave really detailed and vivid accounts of the fantastic work that your projects are doing in addressing some of these challenges. So so thank you very much for that as well. A final notice before we close for your information. So as referred to at the beginning of the webinar, we also have another strand 2.1, which focuses on children and young people between the ages of 14 and 24. A separate evaluation for that strand was also commissioned by the SEUPB and was conducted by Queen's University. This evaluation will shortly be completing, and the results of those will be published soon. So for those of you interested in the wider theme, keep a lookout for that because this will be on its way soon. So I'm going to leave it here, but thank you all again for contributing and for joining. Thank you very much.